The story starts with people working in a call center agency called the Advertising Department of Grand Glory Limited. A man by the name of Howard was just finishing his shift. His boss came and told Howard that he had to work harder because the company was having layoffs. His boss gave him a book about its clients and wants him to make a report about it. Howard is in a hotel talking to an AI about a VR product. Howard was against it and didn't want to become a part of it. His boss came and introduced a woman named Lo. The boss introduced her to his employees. But Howard only sees him as a bootlicker and has no reason to be at the top. He then introduced Mr. Gow, their copywriter. She then greets Howard, but before he could say anything, his boss interrupted him, then said that he's a nobody and she doesn't have to waste her time. The director dismisses them and prepares to leave. As they all got out of the hotel, he thought to himself that he was working hard enough to get praise, but was let down. His friend asks him to choose sides and says that he will do good if he works harder for Mr. Wong. Howard remembered the days when his friend was rebellious and despised the teacher's wishes because they were treating them like worker ants. Howard sees him off. Mr. Wong and Miss Luo were just about to leave. Howard hears their conversation. The boss was saying that she didn't have to waste her time on them, and that giving them mixed signals would mean they'd know about Howard's hard work. He realized this and thought that he'd had enough. The AI came to him and recognized his reaction. Howard is considering resignation, but has to place his anger somewhere else first. He then tells the AI to make duplicates of them to bring to Dreamland. The AI saw an error and told him that it could only scan one person at a time. He was confused for a moment, but by then, the AI had finished scanning. Howard scolds the AI. Why didn't it tell him earlier that the system could only scan one person at a time? The AI inspects a spike of dopamine in his brain and responds that he is currently enjoying the situation. He thinks that it'd be good to have a woman servant in the game. The AI implies that the Dreamland system will activate if he sleeps at midnight. Howard only has one concern, and that is because he is too nervous to fall asleep. The AI explains that the system will interfere with his brain tissues and cause him to fall asleep. In the blink of an eye, he fell asleep. He wakes up in an unknown place with a robotic woman standing in front of him. It's his AI assistant, named AI-63, who has been talking to him, and the administrator of the Dreamland system. She opens various doors in the shop where he can buy things with points. A military knife that costs 2 points. A 100-ton truck for 40 points. Temperature-controlled coat for 20 points and many more. An endless power battery caught Howard's attention, costing 500 points. AI-63 smacks his hand to not touch it if he's not trying to buy it. She explains that once he has completed a challenge, he will earn points to buy and use the items. They will also get progressively more difficult. Howard asks, how does the NPC system work? AI-63 takes 10,000 credit points from Howard in return for the question. He complains that it's robbery. She says that the Dreamland will be activated now. The theme for today is Doomsday Survival. Howard suddenly gets up from his bed, wondering if something has happened. To his surprise, nothing changed. He says he should have known that it's impossible to make a world out of nothing. The power suddenly went out. He gets dressed and gets out of his house. Howard is seeing a post-apocalyptic state of the city. He wonders, where are all the people? An airplane passes over him and crashes into a building. The AI announces that Doomsday Survival has started and he only has 180 days to fight. A fuel leak was seen from the vehicle, and it suddenly explodes behind him. The scene picks up with a plane crashing. Howard thought only of it as a dream and that this place was set in a world where people suddenly disappeared. He writes in his notes about his plan to survive along with his resignation for the next 180 days. But before that, he went to have fun first and went shopping. After shopping, he stops for a moment and asks the AI where Sabrina was. He turns around and sees a pet dog run away from its home after seeing its owner gone. Howard thought the developer only tricked him into getting into their game. A tiger suddenly showed up. he yells at it to back off. But the tiger pounces on him and then licks him. The tiger's name was Dummy, and it had snuck out of its zoo after realizing that its caretakers were gone as well. It was recognizable due to its mark on the back on day 7. Howard is struggling because the food supplies are starting to rot because there is no one left to maintain them. He then drives to a restaurant with a working generator that has been running for more than a week. He finds a bunch of meat in the freezer. Howard decides to live there instead and makes a farm to last himself, surviving alone. On day 31, Howard is driving and wonders what he should do. A figure of his friend appears beside him and tells him that he needs seeds to grow vegetables. He acknowledges it but comes up with another plan. He lets go of the steering wheel and says that he'll just get everything back if he crashes the car. His friend tells him to cheer up and that he'll get the vegetables by this time. Howard couldn't care less about them and says that if the city were filled with feces, like it was radioactive, he thought to himself as if he were abandoned and left alone to take care of the world. His friend tells him to not mind the game, but stay in touch with reality and asks him if he'll do well after he resigns. He tells him to leave it and wake up. Howard did not accept his advice. He sees another car approaching and immediately steps on the brake. She crashed the car. Howard notices her and claims she's Sabrina. Whoa. Sabrina wakes up with a bandage on her face and sees men's clothes right on the bed. She opens the door and sees a diesel generator in the next room and some fresh food on the table. Sabrina meets Howard, hoping that she will eat his homemade cooking for her. She remembers him and asks for his name. His full name is Howard Chen. Howard is surprised at how an AI of Sabrina knows him from the game. Sabrina asks him if he did all the necessities in the house. He explains that he has a garden of vegetables and has cultivated some land. He also asks her how she has been doing since the past month. She explains that she went back to her hometown and that there are no people to be seen there either. Howard is the only living person she's seen for the whole month. He doesn't have a clue why that happened and asks her what she's going to do now. Sabrina doesn't have any. Howard suggests she live in his house. If she gets sick, he can take care of her, and all the necessities are in his house to make her life easier. She agrees to stay. Before that, she has something to stay for. Sabrina implies that Howard is not her type and hopes to have some distance later on. He is confused about why she would focus on that topic. He asks her to stay only because he wanted to talk to someone and not to a mannequin. Howard agrees. She will share the responsibility of taking care of the house. He agrees and says that they should rest for tomorrow. Forward to day 3. Loud noises can be heard outside Howard's room. Wondering what she is doing, he sees a lot of boxes lying on the floor. Howard asks what is she doing. Sabrina replied that she cleaned it up to make it her bedroom. She also installed a walkie-talkie for him to ask for help while she's inside. Howard asks, where is the mannequin that he put right beside it? She threw the mannequin away since it creeped her out. He stresses the point that the mannequin is his companion and that he wouldn't feel lonely. Sabrina says that she will bring it back, but Howard refuses, and he will do it instead. He also collected guns from the police station and put them in a box, but a fully loaded pistol was missing, implying that Sabrina took the gun for herself. After thinking about it carefully, Howard suggests that they should both do their laundry and cooking separately. Sabrina asks why, and he says it's to see each other less often and not get awkward. She asks him to put himself in her situation since she's a woman and he's a man. Sabrina asks him to behave like a gentleman. Howard sarcastically tells him that he understands her problems and that he deserves to be insulted because of her sense of security. The two get into a confrontation with each other. He implies that he will not hurt her, but he is not the gentleman that she would wish he would be. Howard tells her to get over herself. On day 120, the climate has changed, and because of the weather, the bad odor has disappeared over time. Sabrina has been watering the plants and maintaining the environment in order to grow and nourish the vegetables. The two haven't spoken to one another for the past 3 months. Howard gets in his car and asks his mannequin named Donald if Sabrina is sick in her head. He drives off to look for meat. As he's driving, he asks the mannequin about the foods they should consider eating. He then picks up on the fish and agrees on it, saying they will do better than eating mice. He goes to the zoo first and meets up with Tummy the tiger. Howard cuddled the tiger and was glad it survived the harsh environment. He said that a couple months ago he went on a feast and started eating the other herbivores in the zoo. Howard occasionally comes to meet Dummy to give him meat, as he pets Dummy. It sees the deer and immediately runs towards them. Howard sees the deer and thinks they didn't come from the zoo. The weather has changed. It started to rain aggressively, becoming a storm. The strong wind pushed Howard back. He rushes back to his car. Howard claims that it's a very strong typhoon, and that it shouldn't be possible because they're in the inner lands. He quickly remembers that it's supposed to be a challenge in the game. He remembers that Sabrina rides her bike up the mountain and sets off to drive back home. Howard sees the door open, thinking she hasn't returned yet. In a ravaging storm, he yells Sabrina's name upon driving. Howard sees her grasping the pole with a large scratch on her legs. He rushed off in his car and picked up Sabrina. Sabrina was getting phased out while murmuring, "If she's going to live through this." Howard turns on a lighter and ignites the wood for them to be warm. Howard didn't know that there was a mansion in the mountains. He asks her if she comes here a lot with her bike. Sabrina is shivering from the cold. Howard glances and tells her to let him take a look for injuries. She tells Howard that he's alright. Howard stands up angrily, and that this isn't the time for being tough, and if she gets infected, it'll kill her. Sabrina replies, shouting that she refuses to be checked on and that she could do it all by herself. He accepts it, and tells her that he has a plan. God only knows how long it'll take for the typhoon to finish, and the last location where they lived doesn't have any hills high enough that it could be flooded. And the mansion that they're staying in the mountains is the closest and highest shelter that they could find. He tells her that they should move quickly as they need to go home, where they will live. Sabrina asks Howard what she will be doing. He tells her to stay and wait due to her injury, which will only be baggage, and tells her to ventilate the room to avoid carbon monoxide poisoning from the fire. He breathes heavily. Howard thinks that the weather is getting colder and colder. He notices that it is both raining and snowing. He didn't see any signs of electricity, and he thinks that the generator is broken. He went inside a kitchen. The freezer was broken too, and he'll take as much of the necessities as he can. Suddenly, a wave of flood rushes in from the back and washed away some of the food. He was outraged. The self-grown vegetables have washed away, unfortunately, and the food inside the refrigerator will only last for about 3 days, enough for 2 meals. They are short on stock of food. Howard is thinking too much. It is impossible for them to go fishing in the gale, and the mouse holes have been flooded, and there is nothing left out for them. Howard thinks this is the life he marched forward to, as he finds himself buried alive in snow. He thinks that Donald was right. He wouldn't handle a dire situation if he resigned from his job. He asks Donald the mannequin, what does he need to do? Where can he find more food? What does he need to do to save them from dying? He stops by the zoo with the tiger, just staying at the entrance. He shouted and called Dummy for help. He asks the tiger what happened. Howard tells the tiger that he's good at tracking prey, and that he has guns and they can be good partners. He proposes that if he gets hurt, he can wrap his wounds. He yells at him that he's not a dog, and that he should stop acting like Hachiko, the faithful dog. He should give up because there are no zookeepers anymore and they won't come to his rescue. He tells the tiger to leave with him, and that he could die at any moment. Howard fed him for 2 months, and asks, are they even friends? The tiger replied with a loud roar. Howard tells himself that it was just a stupid game and that he shouldn't even be bothered anymore. He respects Dummy's choice, and he won't come back again. He tells Dummy to stay tough and stay alive. As Howard drives back home, he relates the duplicate world they're in excluding the fact that he doesn't dream at all. He compares Woe and the tiger, but both of them share the same personalities. As soon as he arrives, he sees Sabrina lying on the ground. Howard asked her what happened. Miss Woe said that she wants to get water for them to boil to avoid any favors from Howard. Howard looked upset and now has to do extra work. He picks her up. Sabrina insisted on putting her down. Howard spanks her, then says he's had enough of it and declares that he's the one to make decisions from now on. He put her down on the bed, then went to get an emergency kit to tend to her wounds. Sabrina shouts to him that she doesn't need help. Howard didn't have any other choice, and they were running out of food. As he was cleaning her wounds, Sabrina asked what his plan was. Howard says he'll go hunting for a deer the next day. Sabrina hints that deers are extremely alert to anything that smells like danger to them. Howard tells Sabrina that he found a gun under her pillow. While he was packing, he left the bullets in it and gave it to her. She asks why not himself. Howard says that she'll need it for sure and hopes that she starts being nice to him. He tells her to get some rest in order to prepare for the hunt the next day. Howard wakes up and quickly dresses up to search for the deer. He was planning where he would find the best spot to hunt for food. Howard remembers Sabrina's words and only hopes that the deer don't catch his scent. He didn't think of himself as brave enough to take a deer down, so he brought fishnets as backup. As he drives through the snowy weather, the wolves appeared in the scene with a look like they found a prey. While searching in the woods, a deer was seen galloping around Howard. Howard was about to take the shot, but it suddenly disappeared around his line of sight. The deer was moving around him, rustling in the bushes. He keeps chasing the deer, but he loses track. It seems they are aware of every move he makes. Howard thinks that Sabrina was right. It could recognize his smell. He's only tiring himself out by chasing the deer. He then tries another method of finding food. Howard walks towards the river and wonders if he can catch the fish in a torrent of water. He tosses the fishing net and hopes for the best. Howard only brought one fishing net, which is why he can't lose it. It suddenly tightens, pulling him towards the water. He pants while getting out of the cold water, and suddenly a deer appears in front of him. Questioning himself if it was real, Howard looked for his rifle, and it was gone. He lost it in the river. He switches to a shotgun, aims at the deer, holds his breath, and he shoots it, causing the stock to hit his face, while missing the deer, causing it to run away. He compliments the developers of the game, saying the recoil was realistic. While bleeding from his nose, he walks towards home, hurting himself and losing a bunch of stuff in the process. His stomach rumbles. A howl was heard from the distance. Howard looks behind him and sees two wolves following him because of his blood. He readies his shotgun. The wolves turn their backs away from him. He was confused. Transitioning to the home, Howard opens the door with Sabrina in a blanket. He undresses, and she is suddenly flustered about why he is undressing. Howard, while shivering, replies that it's too cold and that he dropped into a river. He wants a fire to warm him up. Sabrina turns around, saying that he doesn't have to take all his clothes off. Howard apologizes. She sees something in his wallet. It's a picture of Howard with someone beside him. Sabrina talks to him about the picture in his wallet. She asks if she's her girlfriend. Howard replies that she's her ex-girlfriend. She asks, why did he break up with her? He says his girlfriend wasn't ready for a family. Howard then asks her if she's dating anyone. She concurs. The one she's dating is named Lawrence. He is currently the CEO of a tech company. He jokingly compliments the guy, saying he's a brave man and that he doesn't have good taste in women. Howard says it's pure torture to live with her. Sabrina gets angry, saying that he's her boss. He gets surprised. She apologizes, saying that she doesn't mean it. The towel suddenly slips off her, revealing her melons. Sabrina tells Howard to get out and throws his clothes at him. He leaves the room while remembering what he saw, saying that it was spectacular. Forward to days 122 to 123. Howard is seen lying down, hiding from the deer. If he gets too close, the deer will immediately run and disappear in the woods. He has never held a gun in real life, and thinks that he must be an awful hunter. Howard readies his shotgun and puts his finger on the trigger. He misses, and the deer runs away in the forest again. Forward to days 124 to 125. Sabrina is talking more often to Howard. She is never complaining that he didn't bring any food back home. Howard thinks that she is reasonable as she is an independent woman. He didn't tell her about the wolves, since if she knew, she'd definitely ask to share the responsibility. Howard notices that Sabrina is getting weaker. Her wounds are not healing. He hopes that they might catch something tomorrow. Since he laid down a trap, the trap consists of wood spikes at the bottom and food on top. Howard explains that deer can't resist the temptation of food in the winter. Sabrina tells him that he should have discussed the plan with her since it's risky. He agrees, knowing that he couldn't make any more traps. But they have no choice. Either they survive or die. Howard drives a car to the forest. He sees blood on the spike trap. Howard immediately follows the trail of blood since it's empty. He hopes that it's a deer. Howard sees two wolves munching on the fallen prey. He immediately shoots the two of them, and he fails. Howard falls to his knees and proceeds to shout out of hopelessness and anger.
Thanks for staying in tune with our manga recap. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for more updates from our content.